My name is Lori Adams. I'm with the Department of Education Budget and Grants Management team. Today I will be presenting on the special education reporting system called SPEDFRS. This is the data collection through the NDE portal, and it opens September 1 through October 31st at midnight. Cost to be reported in SPEDFRS is the allowable SPED reimbursable costs, and those are per the Rule 51. They were for special education students identified with an IEP. These services are to be for related services to that IEP for that SPED student. So these would be for services in excess of educating a regular education student. Staff also must be SPED qualified for professional staff or licensed. Contract service providers have to be approved with NDE or must be approved with NDE and have an approved rate to be allowable for reimbursement. The department reimburses up to the approved rate. You will be recording costs in SPEDFRS by age group. It's a combined data collection for ages 0 to 2, 3 to 5, and 5 to 21. SPEDFRS performs validations against the GMS and the annual financial report. So it's important that you're using the outlined special education function codes in the AFR. You'll also be reporting the IDA expenditures paid through GMS. It's very important to be sure that your expenditures are correctly coded in your district's accounting records using the appropriate SPED function codes outlined by school finance. Again, use SPED-only function codes for ages 0 to 2, 3 to 5, and 5 to 21. You'll also report the IDEA expenditures paid through GMS for 6406, 6408, and 6412 in SPEDFRS. Some of the new features in SPEDFRS is contracted services. Contracted services requires a SPED-AFR count to be selected when reporting cost by age group. That means that if you have a service provider and you are providing services to multiple age groups, you need to make sure that in the contracted service section, you also identify the AFR account that those expenditures are coded to in your accounting records. So we should simply be able to look at your accounting records and find those expenditures coded to that account. Another new feature for transportation is you can now upload a vehicle. So if you're adding a new staff, you can upload the invoice for that particular vehicle. And then we also added this disposal of a vehicle. So if you're removing a vehicle from your district fleet that was used for special education costs, then you would have to complete that disposal form. And you can do that now through the system. We also have a new feature called Export Print feature. This is a export selection that will allow you to save and print the data from SPEDFRS. This will create an Excel workbook, and then you'll have an individual worksheet for each section identified in SPEDFRS. And then in that, you'll also be able to see the NDE review. So if you're looking at last year's data, you can see the adjustments or any comments that may have been applied in that data collection. There's a program reimbursement information. So this will give you an outline of the different data elements that are in that reimbursement. So you'll know when you submit your request what the actual amount of the SPEDFRS is that you're reporting. So SPEDFRS is a reimbursement for the school age program, and that payment starts in December, and that's 7 payments. And then also in SPEDFRS, you'll be receiving reimbursement if you have transportation costs for 0 to 2, 3 to 5, and 5 to 21, and that will start in the spring of the current school year for prior year expenditures. Also have a collection status history that will give you a date and time stamp of any submissions or the review, so you'll be able to go in and see an actual history of the status of the collection. And then this year we're having system-generated emails. So in the month of October, 2 weeks before the deadline of October 31st, districts will be receiving emails depending on the status of that data collection. So if you have entered data but haven't submitted it, and there's a 2-level submission, then you'll be receiving emails notification up to that deadline date. And that will be sent to the NDE portal login. And if that is different than the contact person that you enter into SPEDFRS, then that person would also get an email. Another new feature is a supporting documentation upload. Last year we only allowed for a PDF format. This year we're allowing for zip file, Excel, and PDF. One thing to be sure of when you are making your documentation available to us, that we're able to read all of the columns. Sometimes we noticed that their column lists weren't quite long enough or wide enough, and so then we didn't have the information that we really needed, and so we had to follow up. So make sure that the data is readable and it's all on one page. Sometimes when you have an Excel and you change that to a PDF, then sometimes the data goes on to several pages and that makes it difficult. Some common issues that we found in reviewing year 1 of SPEDFRS was the coding in the district's accounting records, that some districts were still using the non-SPED function codes. Last year was a transition year with a new account code, so we had several amendments that were required with the school finance. So hopefully this year, in year 2 of the accounting AFR codes, that some of that won't be as big a deal as it was last year. One issue was reporting non-allowable reimbursable costs or non-reimbursable costs in SPEDFRS. So for instance, supplies. If you're doing a district-wide purchase for all students and you want to charge a % of that to special ed, that's not allowable, because those would be the same services that will be applied to all students of the district, not just special to special ed. The only way that would be allowable is if you had a computer that was different size or had something that was specific to a special needs student. Claiming service provider costs above the approved rate. You know, some service providers bill at a higher rate than what NDE has approved, and SPEDFRS and IDEA, we reimburse up to that approved rate. Equipment must be per Rule 51 to be allowable. So I would review that Rule 51 if you have equipment or capital outlay costs that you're trying to get reimbursed for, to make sure those are allowable. Facility costs, those are not allowable for SPED reimbursement for state funds. And then costs not supported by the student's IEP. Those would be non-allowable costs as well. Another common issue was an inaccurate position assignment and staff reporting. So be sure that when you are reporting your special education professional staff, that they are certified, and one, they have the correct SPI code. And S is a school age, and that's for state and local funds. And I would be for federal funds, IDEA, and or a 7 is early childhood federal, IDEA, state and local funds. So just be very careful when you are coding those staff, because it could cause you some reimbursement issues. Okay, staff with an SPI code of 0, which is general education, is non-reimbursable. There is an exception per the rule if you have an administrator that is providing split services to the district. For instance, the superintendent and assistant superintendent principal and assistant principal, those positions require prior approval to be reimbursable in SPEDFRS. Those letters usually go out in August, September, October from the Special Populations Office. Another common issue was a staff upload, so be sure that you're using the staff upload layout. And when you format it, you have the correct formatting for each of those columns. And then do not include the column title in the file upload. So if you have row 1 and you excuse me, have column titles in there, do not include that line in your upload. Otherwise, your file will error out. And supporting documentation, we had several instances where the documentation was not sufficient. So it's required for each section in SPEDFRS. And when you're giving us your account information, make sure you give it to us for all of the major object codes, a year-to-date transaction detailed, and it includes the EFR account. Also need copies of service providers and the invoice bills. Here's a list of resources that could make reporting in SPEDFRS and give you additional information that you may need. There's a Rule 51 link, a special education reporting information that will take you to a website in our budget and grants management team that gives you a lot of resources to use for special ed. The annual financial report, that's the school district information. That would be the book of accounts published by the school finance team. The SPEDFRS questions and answers, that is in SPEDFRS. And the SPEDFRS user's manual, that has been updated. So hopefully we've taken some of the issues in year one and applied those into the user's manual. And the NDE portal link is here, and that's where you'll find access to SPEDFRS through the portal. So I would make sure that when you're working through this that you access some of this information. If you need assistance, you can contact the NDE help desk. They will help with data entry questions or anything that you might have with SPEDFRS. There's a list of contact people. These are the staff that reviewed SPEDFRS last year for financial assistance, and then this year we added information in for the transportation assistance with SPEDFRS. So these are some good contact names that you can reach out if you have any questions. And again, my name is Lori Adams, and this recording is as of 8/25, not 21. Thank you. I hope this information was valuable.